If you were to ask to name the richest person that you know, chances are you're going to say Jeff Bezos. But do you know that throughout the history of mankind, there are far richer people than Bezos? Quantifying a person's wealth is a tough task, especially if they lived centuries ago, if they owned kingdoms, or if they ruled an empire. But this has been made possible through the help of our modern historians. In today's video, we've compiled the top 10 richest people in history, how they accumulated their wealth, and how they utilize it. But before we dive into the lives of these people, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Let's start off at number 10, William the Conqueror, at $230 billion. William the Conqueror was born around 1028 and then became the first Norman king of England. His fortune peaked at $230 billion. That's a little than double of Jeff Bezos's. And how did he accumulate such an amount of wealth? Well, his name gives it away. William earned his fortune by pillaging pretty much everyone else's. In 1066, he was able to conquer England when the country saw the loss of approximately 100,000 lives. This has exalted him to become the King of England and did several remarkable things. First, he banned slavery. Second, he made everyone speak English, since he wasn't fluent in speaking English. During his reign as a king, he was able to build over 500 castles across England and Wales, making him one of the largest landowners in England of all time. He was known to have an extravagant lifestyle by eating well and wearing fine clothes, that when he died in 1087, his clothes and jewelry were immediately stripped away from his body, leaving him naked. Number 9. Osman Ali Khan, $236 billion. Osman Ali Khan is one of the most recent billionaires that made it on our list. In 1937, he was featured on the cover of Time magazine as the world's richest person. His wealth is well known, especially in India, for being the last ruler of the Hyderabad state. Modern experts approximate that his wealth wavers around $236 billion, but the Guinness Book of World Records says otherwise, as they claim that he's worth $750 billion. But for the sake of this video, I'll go with the experts on this one. Osman Ali Khan possessed the Jacob diamond, which is the 5th biggest Polish diamond in the world. He used this diamond merely as a paperweight in his office. His jewelry collection doesn't end there. He owned a large collection of jewels called the Jewels of Nizams, which includes 173 pieces of jewelry, including 2,000 carats worth of emeralds, pearl-studded necklaces, earrings, armbands, and buckles. This collection is estimated to be worth $2 billion only, which is just a fraction of his wealth. Despite his massive wealth, he's known to live a simple life. He wore the same hat almost throughout his life. He ate his food on a tin plate. He knitted his own sock, and he was known to beg his guests to bum a cigarette. His rule made a significant impact on India, as he introduced electricity, airplanes, and railways to the country, as well as donated a large portion of his wealth to the country's educational and religious institutions. Number 8. Nikolai Romanov, $300 billion. Russia is known for its fair share of wealthy clans and families, and the Romanovs are one of them. But their wealth is a different story, as this is one of the reasons why they have been massacred as well. Nikolai Romanov is the last emperor of Russia and was viewed by modern historians as an incompetent and inefficient leader. It was noted that Nikolai himself said, "I am not prepared to be a Tsar. I never wanted to be one. I know nothing of the business of ruling." His reluctance into being a leader doesn't stop him from enjoying the perks of being one. His annual salary is 200,000 rubles, with an additional 20,000 rubles on top of that for his clothing and miscellaneous fund. However, he often overspends his budget to an additional 150,000 rubles. For your reference, an average worker only earns 500 rubles annually. That means he's spending money 40 times more than that of the annual salary of an average worker. He spent his money on anything extravagant: clothes and military uniforms for him and his wife, a coronation with silver and gold tableware, and a choir of 1,200 people serenading the couple. He also loves going on hunting trips with 50 crew members to transform the experience as luxurious as possible. Number 7. Andrew Carnegie, $309 billion. Andrew Carnegie started from working as a steel magnate, changing spools of thread into accumulating a net worth of $309 billion. His early career includes him working as a telegraph messenger. His hard work and keen attention to detail paved his way to becoming the superintendent of the Western Division of Pennsylvania Railroad. When he was 24 years old, his superiors taught him about investing. This has influenced him to invest a lot of money in the road industry right before it began to boom. After the Civil War, he resigned and then developed several ironwork companies, which include Union Iron Works and Keystone Bridge Works. He also established the Carnegie Steel Company, which then he sold to J.P. Morgan for $13 billion. He utilized his wealth by writing a book about the gospel of wealth. The book tackles the wealthy's social responsibility and contains his famous quote, "The man who dies rich dies disgraced." He donated $4.8 billion to his charities, and when he died, he gave most of his wealth away, and what was left was given to his family, his housekeeper, nurse, maid servant, and butler. Number 6. Jacob Fugger, $400 billion. Jacob was famously known as Jacob the Rich, and all for good reasons. Back in the 1400s, Jacob's parents earned their fortune by trading textiles with Italy. Jacob started in the mining operations of silver, copper, and cinnabar. When he came of age, he also has a gift on investing, and he often diversifies his wealth across different industries, which definitely worked out for him. He loaned money to the Vatican, which helped build Vatican's infrastructures, such as the Sistine Chapel. He also founded Fugere, which is the first ever low-income housing program in the world. It consists of 52 homes that house different people who were in difficult situations. The yearly rent is only 1 guilder, or is equivalent to 88 cents. Aside from the cheap rent, the people were also asked to pray 3 times daily in the name of Fugger and his family. Number 5. John D. Rockefeller, $400 billion. John D. Rockefeller is considered as the wealthiest American man of all time, and Jeff Bezos has a long way to go before he can claim this title. Rockefeller is an oil tycoon who founded the Stanford Oil Company in 1870. The price of oil skyrocketed in value shortly after he launched his company. At one point, his company controlled 90% of the oil in the United States. His immense wealth was considered 2% of the national economy. With all this fortune, he has owned houses across the United States. He also owned the Pocantico Estate in New York, which covered 3,510 acres. It includes 75 houses, 70 roads, swimming pools, tennis courts, bowling alleys, and its own farm. The public isn't really fond of Rockefeller. That's why he pushed his philanthropy game further and donated 10% of his income to his charities yearly. Number 4. Akbar I, $500 billion. Akbar I is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. That's why he has the quench to conquer in his blood. In the course of his ruling, he was able to triple the size of his territories. His empire is known as the Mughal Empire, and it stretches across India up to northern Afghanistan. His empire also controlled 25% of the world's GDP for years. Akbar I is also known for his religious tolerance. He is a Muslim, but most of his advisors are Hindus. He had worked hard in uniting these two religions together and giving each individual under his empire the freedom to choose. There is little information with regards to how his immense wealth was spent. Number 3. Augustus Caesar. It may be a fact that Julius Caesar is more popular, but Augustus Caesar, his heir, is the rich one. Augustus is the only confirmed trillionaire in history, with experts estimating around $4.3 trillion. He owns a fifth of the Roman Empire's wealth, which accounted for 30% of the world's GDP. On top of this, a significant part of his fortune comes from his inheritance. 75% of Julius Caesar's wealth was inherited to him. His reign brought peace and prosperity to the empire. He was able to double the size of the Roman Empire during his 40-year reign, and he managed to bring Rome into the modern age efficiently. Upon his death, he said, "I found Rome of clay, I leave it to you of marble." As of the present day, the palace he lived in is known as the House of Augustus. Number 2, Shazong of Song. We're now at the runner-up for the richest person in history. Emperor Shazong reigned from 1067 to 1085. a very prosperous era of China. Back then, the country was considered the top maker of bronze in the world, and farmers had the right to have their own property. This has catalyzed the production of rice, thus making them a commercial superpower on top of gunpowder printing and magnetic compasses. The Song dynasty introduced the world's first paper money and the world's first navy, allowing them to defend their trade routes as well as their products. With all these, Emperor Shizong was able to control 30% of the global GDP. Experts have said that his wealth is immeasurable, and it hovers around trillions of dollars. And at number 1, Mansa Musa. You may not have heard of him prior to this video, but you definitely won't forget him after this. Mansa Musa had an immense wealth that historians and experts cannot fathom the exact fortune he really had. In the early 1300s, he became the ruler of the Mali Empire. At this time, Europe was struggling due to a lot of factors: the Great Famine, the Civil War, and the Black Plague. But Mansa Musa's empire is unfaltering, and it is the biggest producer of gold and salt, which were the two most important things at that time. During the first few years of his rule, he has successfully conquered 24 cities and their surrounding districts. He wasn't known in the Middle East by the time, but everything changed when he started his journey to Mecca. As a Muslim, this pilgrimage is an important part of his religion, but that doesn't mean that he has to endure the voyage. The journey to Mecca traversed 4,000 miles. He brought thousands of soldiers, slaves, and heralds. Everyone wore lavish Parisian silks and carried gold staffs. He also brought at least 80 camels and horses that carried pounds and pounds of gold. This venture was characterized by his frivolous spending and even gave gold as gifts to the cities he passed by. Upon hearing that Mansa Musa is approaching Cairo, El Nasir, the Sultan, ordered him to visit his palace. He initially refused, but due to Al Nasir's insistence, he finally agreed. There was tension between the two when Mansa Musa refused to kiss Al Nasir's feet, which was considered a common gesture at the time, but eventually he did it. They feasted, and Al Nasir offered Mansa Musa lodging for the night. By the time Mansa Musa left, the people were basking in the fortune he gave them. The streets were covered in gold, and the wealth is evident everywhere. Unfortunately, his gifts caused the value of metal to depreciate and caused an economic downfall to the cities of Cairo, Mecca, and Medina. It would take 12 years for these cities to financially recover. By the time he reached Mecca, he focused on his religion and studies for days. Upon returning home, he worked on building mosques, palaces, and universities all throughout his empire. One of his notable creations is the Conqueror Madrasa, a university that housed 1 million manuscripts. Sadly, when Mansa Musa died, the Mali Empire began to see its downfall. There were constant civil wars that weakened the country's trade abilities. Nearby European cities started invading Mali to exploit their resources, and the rest is history. There you have it, the top 10 richest people that have ever graced the earth. Do you think Jeff Bezos could make it on this list anytime soon? Only time will tell. This has been Lux Cove, and we'll see you in the next video.